In the U.S., in the Western world, there's something called the maker movement, and that has really exploded here in China as well.
It is a really natural way for them to find out a new toy and play with it.
Sometimes I think students feel like I don't know enough, so I won't do something, right? As opposed to, well, I'm curious about this thing, I want to make this thing. How do I get to that point?
Hello and welcome to Crossover. I'm Yi Shu in Beijing with my always awesome co-host Tianren.
Always happy to be here.
So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you.
You always do.
Do you consider yourself a very handy type of fix-it-up kind of guy?
You know, as I'm getting on in age, I'm finding that
You're really old, I can tell.
Oh yeah, almost over the hill. I need to start looking after household appliances more often.
You're
have to
becoming
fix stuff that
domestic.
breaks down. Very much so. I'm washing the dishes too, but you know, it's something.
That's why you're trying to fix a dishwasher.
Right. I mainly fix nowadays.
Okay. Are you a good builder?
When I was a kid, maybe. I used to build Meccano sets, which were, I don't know if you had them in the States, they were kind of Lego for cooler, older kids.
What are you saying about yourself? Yeah?
They were made of
more
metal.
Advanced.
Yeah, they were made of metal. You had nuts and bolts. You actually needed screwdrivers and wrenches and stuff. But we don't really do them anymore because, you know, most people just play on their computers and phones and iPads.
That's so true. I mean, even little kids these days, that's something I struggle with my kids all the time, is they always want to play with the iPad. Whereas when I was a kid, we had to build the toy that we wanted to play with.
Because there was nothing else to play with.
Yeah. Well, you know, people are trying to change all of that. In the U.S., in the Western world, there's something called the maker movement, and that has really exploded here in China as well. Well, what the maker movement has also done is taken form in something called maker education here throughout both in China and also throughout the world. And today we have three panelists who are leading the effort here in China. I want to welcome Molly, Marianne, and Kit. Welcome to Crossover.
Thank you for coming to the show. Thank you.
So tell me, what exactly is maker education? I mean, first of all, please tell me what you do within this idea of maker education.
Yeah, okay. So I come from Beijing Makerspace, and we have this Creatica Lab, which is a makerspace for kids. So we help all of the kids to find what they really want to do inside the makerspace and help them to make it. That's the thing we do.
When did you start Creatica?
Oh, we start Creatica almost like 4 years now at the first summer camp that is formed by a group of parents. They said you have so many makers in your makerspace and their projects is so interesting. Can you introduce them to my kids?
Right.
Yeah.
And Tianren, this really seems to be a reaction to what we were just talking about.
Right.
Parents thinking that their kids are spending too much time in front of the TV or in front of screens, or even in front of, especially with Chinese education, in front of their books and reciting things. Like, let's get them to do things with their hands, right?
Yeah.
Marianne.
Hi. So I'm the director of the Interactive Media Arts program at NYU Shanghai, and IMA is the undergraduate version of a program we have in New York at the Tisch School of the Arts called ITP. ITP is a graduate program, and it was the first interactive design program in the United States. We've been working with Arduino and processing and all sorts of things for many, many years. So when the university asked if we wanted to come to China and run an undergraduate version, we didn't know what that would mean. What we found is that our students are extraordinary, and for the most part, in the way we instruct is really looking at collaboration over competition. And for many of our students, I think it's the first time they've been asked the question, "What are you interested in?" Right? And what are you curious about? And then how can we help you unpack that and explore that further?
Do you find that it's difficult for them to even express what they're interested in?
No. No, once they understand the question, they understand it very quickly.
And you feel like throughout those years it's been suppressed a bit?
I think, and this is not specifically Chinese, I think it's everywhere.
Right.
For most students, by the time they're 17, no one has ever really asked them that question in their educational experience.
Right.
So once they're asked it, they're very excited to really think about it.
We were talking about this earlier, that our current education system is structured around the industrial age, when people used to go to factories to work their entire lives. They needed a one-size-fits-all approach, but now things are changing. You need problem-solving skills that you could use in your real life. And Kit, I wanted to ask you, because you recently started a new company. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I've been working in extracurricular education here in China for about 6 or so years, and just recently moved to Beijing and started a tech education, maker education business. With really the aim of getting kids hands-on with these technologies that are changing the world so fast, and hopefully inspiring them to think a little bit differently about what they might do in the world and how they might do that.
And tell me, because you've been here in China for quite some time. It's been 8 years now.
8.5 years, yes.
What did you see in the market to make you shift your focus to tech and maker education?
Maybe this isn't the right answer as an entrepreneur, but I guess I saw it in myself first. So really kind of thinking about, well, having this experience of very traditional educational environment for the kids, and really wanting to bring some of that wider creativity and problem solving. So it kind of more came from my desire to help the kids prepare for what I think will be a very different world in 20 or so years' time.
Yeah, there's always, I have small kids, and I remember watching a video, how do we prepare our children for jobs that don't even exist currently? These are going to be, when they're 20, 22, graduating from college, they will probably be pursuing careers that don't even exist today in this world. Well, we've taken some video of some children who are part of these maker education programs. Let's take a look.
The maker education first started in the Western world. Countries like the US, England, and Canada have made maker education an important part of the elementary school education by creating their own maker spaces. Nowadays in China, it almost seems like the traditional teaching method is no longer able to satisfy students' desire for more knowledge. This is why we are seeing maker education being practiced in Chinese schools. The courses of maker education have become the most popular ones among school kids, not only in international schools, but also in local schools, including Jingsan School and Beijing Bayi Middle School. In Beijing local schools, not only do they set up maker spaces for their students to work on their projects, but they also provide equipment to help them turn their ideas into real inventions. The educators encourage students to think outside the box and work together to create their own pieces.
Wow, I've got to say that was so nostalgic for me, because I did computer science at university. This is the sort of thing that I did at university.
Really?
Not, and I saw most of the kids in those videos were quite young.
Right.
And it seems like you've kind of brought forward the curriculum. So it's mind-blowing for me.
I would love to be a kid, and I'd love to do, I saw them working with 3D printers or using like saws. It's amazing. Tell me, what's the reaction when a child first comes to one of your programs?
It is totally different from sending them to another class to learn. It is a really natural way for them to find out a new toy and play with it. And I think that is quite in the nature of the kids, how they learn from themselves. Yeah.
See, when I was at university, these were taught in rigid curriculums. They were taught in modules. These were things that you had to learn in order to become a computer scientist, an engineer. But it seems like for kids, these are just games. Is that what a maker is?
Yeah.
You define a maker as someone who creates things because they want to, because it's for fun?
Yeah, I think maker is quite a general idea, but the real makers is really a small group of people quite a dream with the thing they really like. They might be really into like electronics, or they might be the one actually build up like really big sculptures. That's, for me, is a real maker. But for everybody, they can be a maker themselves, but just like using the tools at the side of like the workshop or at the home.
So then what's the goal of, a child goes to Creatica, what are you hoping to teach them? Or a college student goes and attends your program, what is it that you're hoping they get out of your program?
So in our program, we have 2 foundation courses, one that introduces students to a variety of media and web development, another that is working with electronics and computation. And then our electives are very wide, and we change them a lot. So we have courses in wearable technology and virtual reality and animation and paper arts. And we really look at how the students can sort of combine all these things. They have a very open studio. And what we really think is, the value in our approach is, learn by making. right? And then the other part, learn as you need, right? And so sometimes I think students feel like I don't know enough, so I won't do something, right? As opposed to, well, I'm curious about this thing, I want to make this thing. How do I get to that point? And so what are the directions that I need to investigate to find that? And I tell my students all the time that anything that I'm teaching them at this point, I am completely self-taught in, right? Anything I learned in college, which was many, many, many years ago, doesn't really apply. So, like, how do you keep learning and adapting and responding to things, to the world around you that you're interested in, and
so very much less about the lecturer standing in front of the hall and, you know, telling people what to do this class, giving people notes, and more about everyone collaborating.
Right. Well, we actually, in our space, we physically designed it, and this is something we took from ITP, where the studio that the students work in is in the center of the room, and that's the center of the space, and then the classrooms are off to the side, the faculty offices are off to the side, all. And so unlike many university environments that really focus on faculty-driven research, we really think that student-initiated research is a really compelling thing and the thing that we should support.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key things, equipping next generation with the confidence to know they can and they can apply what they would like to do. We all need to be able to do everything in the world. So how can we start inspiring these kids to do that?
Right. Do parents need to be convinced that this type of education
that's a very good
is...
question, yeah. So my focus recently has been very much understanding what parents are thinking, what consumers are looking for. And it's a real challenge because it's very different from the traditional educational offering. And there's a slight lack of really concrete educational outcomes. Traditionally, maths, you go, you know, grade 1, I can do this sum, and I have this clear, you know, success tick. Whereas with this type of education, you might fail, which is kind of terrible often, or you might not have that kind of concrete, yes, I learnt this. So it's a slightly longer process, and that's something that can be slightly challenging for parents who are used to a very clear stage-by-stage traditional education.
Right.
Can I address the point of failure for a moment? Because that's something actually
absolutely.
we encourage our students. We say to them all the time, we encourage you to fail spectacularly. And they don't know what that means. But you know, that failure, if you pursue something to its logical end and it's not exactly what you had intended or thought it was going to be, is not failure in this process. And it might not work, but it's okay.
You almost learn more through that process because you think back. If it all works, then it all worked. I knew that. Whereas by that process of failing means you have to look back and think, oh, and this and that, and maybe I could have done this, and all these kind of things.
Is there discomfort with that failure the first time around for a lot of these kids? I mean, I'm guessing that a lot of the kids that go to Creatica, they're good students. Their parents probably come from, you know, they have
universities.
Or, you know, children who come from pretty wealthy families. They've been given everything. What is it like the first time they, you know, fail?
So we have like meaning 3 rules in Creatica. The first rule is just like no judge, just try it. So like if you have failed, we say, oh yeah, just try it again. Sometimes they're gonna cry. Sometimes they really displeased with the thing when it actually cannot work. But we think it is okay. If it is not work this time, you can try it next time. That means you can spend more time with it and know much about it.
Right.
And we think that is good. And also sometimes we talk with the parents a lot because the parents always want the kids to learn this, and learn that. When we place all of the tools on the table, parents gonna say like, all of the tools my kids will be learned. Is click 3D printing, click electronics.
They want to check them off.
Yeah.
You mean? Okay.
Yeah, check them out. But what we're saying is like there are so many things in the world we can learn, but we cannot learn all of that. That's the key point is the thing you kids really like, is the thing he or she really want to learn. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're not trying to teach them how to use these tools, you know, like just check off the list of tools. You're really trying to teach them how to inquiry, like how do they kind of develop their own sense of inquiry, and then also how to engage and figure out what it is that they need to build something. Do parents get in the way of maker education? I mean, I know as a parent, we are very results and outcome oriented, but it sounds like everything that you're teaching, it's the process along the way. It's not being able to create that robot that's going to actually be functional. It's every step of building it. But, you know, as a parent, you're like, okay, I've spent, you know, 500 RMB for this one class. My child has spent 2 hours there. I want to make sure that it works.
Well, they certainly get in the way taking photos all the time.
Physically,
it looks very nice. I think they're willing, if they're willing to kind of sign up and take part, then they tend to kind of let go. It's more of a kind of, am I going to let my child do this? And there's an educational process for the parents as well. They can see the kids going, oh, that didn't work, and then they maybe ask their friend, and maybe they don't. I think the parents like want to help, but also understand that the process is, by definition, more hands-off. And so that there's a kind of ongoing process there, but so far so good.
Mary, how has your program transformed some of your students? I mean, in terms of the way they see the world.
So I think there have been some surprises. One was that there were very few expectations for our program. The numbers projected were quite small, and when we arrived, we immediately had 40 students registered for our classes, and we were a faculty of 2, and then 80 students registered, and we were a faculty of 2. We currently have about, I'd say, 170 students registered and 305 seats in classes. So the interest was surprising to everybody, though had we thought about it, it wouldn't have been really, right? I think
it's no surprise to you.
It wasn't a surprise. But I think it does reflect certain ideas that we have that are generational, like, oh, technology. And for young people, as we were talking, this is not technology. This is life. This is an extension of themselves. This is media. This is what they are used to. Our students do have enormous parental pressure, too, though, because they're choosing majors. And what does this mean in terms of a life decision, right? And so is this a practical major? What does it mean to graduate with, you know, this idea of a portfolio that demonstrates that you can make all these things, right? And so part of our process has also been to some degree educate their parents too, that this is a world now where interactivity is embedded in everything and in every field imaginable. If you just walk down the street or in the world, you'll see it, and there are opportunities for their children. But I think for our students, it's interesting to see their confidence, and their confidence is just they're very comfortable getting up in front of people now, because one of the things we talk about is actually they present their work a lot, and so what they've done, why they did it, how they did it, if they were to do it again, what worked, what didn't, and so this becomes part of who they are when they present what they do, or when they look at what other people do as well. And one thing I'm very, very proud of is that our program has incredibly strong young women. You know, there's a generation of young women who are just really, I mean, in my mind, going to change the world. They're just really just remarkable, and to see them feel confident and know their own ability and their own strengths is great.
Yeah. When we come back, we're going to talk more about maker education here in China. But Kit, I want to thank you, first of all, for joining us here.
Nice to be
We're
here.
going to keep the ladies here in the studio, and we're going to continue by bringing on a parent of one of these children who's been involved very heavily in maker education onto the stage and hear her perspective. Please stay with us. Violet, this is an amazing piece of work. These were all done by your daughter.
That's right.
We actually broke the thumb just now before the segment started, and all 5 of us, the crew in the studio, we couldn't fix it.
Welcome back to Crossover. So we've been talking about maker education and the whole maker movement, and we've got some really wonderful props on our not just props actually, actual working maker products. And we're joined by Doris, whose daughter goes to maker education. Can you tell us a little about
these are all
this
done by your daughter?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are some of the examples of projects they work on in Makerspace, and they start with the design and they code the computer and they learn how to work the tools, and you're left with a wonderful toy or a robot that you can bring home and play with.
We just love this gauntlet.
And her name is Viola.
Viola, this is an amazing piece of work. So tell me what this does. I mean, Molly, you've seen something like this before, right?
Yeah, it may just use laser cut to cut the shape, and then you use the rubber band to band it together. And when you pull the hose,
Wow.
yeah, gonna move. Yeah.
Actually, all 4 fingers. Now, I can't move the thumb, and I'm going to tell you why we can't move the thumb. I'm very sorry, Viola, but we actually broke the thumb just now before the segment started, and all 5 of us, plus the crew in the studio, we couldn't fix it. So we're gonna have to send this home with your mom for you to fix the thumb. See, all we could do was secure it like a splint. Yeah. But this is amazing. How long did this take for her to make?
Well, she obviously had help from her teachers, but she just went one afternoon and came back with that. So I think the design had been in the works prior to that, but she was able to just actually print it out and put it together in the course of the afternoon, which
is
amazing. Yeah.
How old is your daughter?
So she just turned 11, and as a really young child, she's always been interested in building things and doing coding. And so for her, she used to spend hours just constructing things out of paper and sticks and tape. And the fact that she can actually...
Say, when we were younger and pretending to be our favorite X-Man, this would have been really handy.
And please don't do anything provocative with those fingers.
Well, I was worried about coming in security because I was a little bit concerned about it looking like a weapon. But
Right. Yeah, so when did she start?
Well, I think she's always been into building things ever since she was able to manipulate things in her hands. And we'd come home and there would be all types of toys and blocks arranged in patterns and in letters and in messages. And so we have a lot of pictures.
How old was she then?
She's about 2, probably.
When she was 2?
Yeah, but she's always been a very visual learner and very tactile. So it's all about touching and putting things spatially, in a relational kind of a pattern. And it's always been about patterns. And so I knew she was interested in computers, and so we found a kids language called Scratch, which you probably heard of. That is a free language program, or excuse me, a website that allows kids to learn the basics of programming, basically just building blocks of logic statements, and and then as a result they can develop a game or an app that they can share around the world for free and get feedback as well as tag on to other people's ideas. So for her that was really inspiring, and ever since, any kind of activity we can find that allows her to do coding or programming or building things, we've signed her up in, and it's really been just her own motivation to do so, and it's been amazing for her. She really finds a community in it, and I think she has a lot of personal satisfaction at seeing her creations made real. Of course, it means our house is very cluttered, but as parents, that's a small price to pay.
Does she lose track of time when she's doing something like this?
Oh yes, she can spend hours and hours, and we sort of have to stop her to eat or do other things like homework, which she does reluctantly and then gets back to what she's doing. But I find this has actually been really amazing for her as a learner as well, because when I was growing up, a lot of what we learned in school was based on memorization. It was very sequential, linear learning. And for someone like Viola, who is very much a visual learner, and for her, she doesn't need repetition. She sees it, she knows it right away, and she can synthesize that and figure out, well, what can I do with that? For someone like that, having this kind of maker education is very helpful, because it allows her to sort of show her ideas and develop her talents in a way that maybe in a traditional school setting it wouldn't have been possible.
Right. Marianne, Molly, can you, I guess, tell me what you think? I mean, from an 11-year-old creating something like this hand, what is this? This is a robot?
The robot car. We have made one.
She made this too.
Yeah, but it's sort of part of a
It's a
set.
kit.
But what she did do is when I came home. Yeah, you can turn it on. There's a switch on the side. I think. Yeah.
Can I even find the switch? I'm not sure. Here,
Right.
I found
had to have
it.
her show me this morning.
It lit up.
Nice.
Yeah, so she's programmed it to play music and follow me around the house.
I'm going to move the hand so that
It follows you around.
Yeah,
the
because
house.
there's sensors. I don't have it all set up now, but and she was very concerned I wasn't bringing the proper joysticks and things, but just for the. But
I
it
can
does
hear
have
the
a
music
lot of-
playing right now.
Can
I
you
didn't
move it?
even press anything.
Oh yeah, so she found out. So there's certain sound, right? You can find certain tones. So she timed it out so that it plays Jingle Bells. It also plays Happy Birthday if it's your
she
birthday.
likes the Christmas songs.
Yeah, she likes.
How do we
I
move this thing?
don't
Maybe
know
Molly
what I'm
here.
supposed to
Oh, that's for something else actually.
Oh,
yeah, she doesn't. She uses a joystick.
Okay,
for
so we
this.
don't have the right joystick for it.
Right, sorry.
But she created.
And did she
Wow.
have to program this as well? I'm
Yeah,
assuming?
she programmed it. But I think this is something that you'll see as a standard building block in these types of
When we
programs.
first made this kind of robotic cars, we used 7 hours to make it for all of the kids and their parents.
Right, 7 hours for something like this.
Yeah, for this one. Yeah, and we didn't expect that much time because there's still some like little screws, little nuts, kind of hard for the kids, and also the programming part is not that easy. But all of the kids keep the passion for all through the all 7 hours.
Right.
Yeah, from the middle of the noon till the night, and didn't have like a dinner.
Yeah, like
And-
it just feels like it's one of those things that kids will really lose track of time and just be so focused on fixing it and making sure that it works properly. I mean, that's.
I mean, one of the things that I think is remarkable about this is that there's so many important concepts buried into it, you know, in terms of engineering and mechanisms and fabrication and all sorts of things that if they were taught in a traditional way, she probably would just tune out too, right? But instead, it's all embedded into something that has context to her that's really important, right? And the context is what's really driving her to do it. And she doesn't even realize, I mean, you know, how complex it is mechanically, right?
Right. I was listening to what you were saying earlier about just, you know, how jobs are changing and the idea of, you know, what you can do these days in what our kids' future will be like with technology is so different. And I remember her telling me a few years ago that when she grew up, she wanted to be a computer programmer or coder. And I asked her why. I said, what, so you can play games all day? And she said,
That's a typical mother.
I know, right,
mom's
of course.
Well, that was
Bad
why I
mom,
did
bad
computer
mom.
science.
Yeah. No, but she said, no, I want to be able to change the world and make it a better place. And I thought, oh, what, to make games? But now you can sort of see that.
Sounds incredible, right?
Well, she's a very unique child. So, yeah, a lot of fun.
Actually, that is the point we're giving to kids because there's so many years before they actually go into the society and get a job. So we we adapt a concept from Singularity University, saying like, how can you impact 10 billion people in the next 10 years?
Right.
So instead of like, how can you earn more money or get a better job? We want the kids to think about the future in a bigger picture. Yeah, to think about the whole world,
Right.
not like a
And with
job.
these projects, they're presented with a problem, and they have to figure out the way, the steps that they need to take to reach a solution to
Exactly.
that
I read
problem.
that Elon Musk started his own school for 20 children because he didn't like what his kids were being taught at school. He created a maker school for his kids and some of the employees of Tesla. And basically, it is a maker school. He said that, you know, traditionally people might say, we need to build an engine, so first let's tell you about screwdrivers. But in his school, they take apart the engine and then they think, oh, wait, I need a screwdriver to do that. So he basically comes across problems and you solve the problem as you go along.
Right.
So I guess with this hand, you know, we realized we needed a rubber band to get the joint back in place. It's very real life application.
Right.
Well, that's the advantage with this technology now being so accessible to kids and being affordable, because in the old days we would have to draw up our sketches and we'd have to test it, and the very last step would be the fabrication. Now they can create it, you know, print it out in the afternoon. Oh, that doesn't work so well, let's try it, go back to the drawing board, do it again, and actually perfect it. And I think this changes the way that the kids' minds work, as well as how they approach, like, you know, a solution or how they address a problem, like you said. I remember, you know, I used to think that the way someone wrote was a really good indication of how someone thought, right? That was a good representation. I think in the future it's going to be more, how do you make things, right? Because it's much more multidimensional than that now.
And I guess with the lowering cost of technology and everything, you know, it's a lot easier to make.
Makes it very accessible.
Yeah.
Doris, I'm just curious, you know, the confidence, you know, we talked about confidence in the first segment. The confidence that your child has I guess, gained through projects like this? You know, being able to engage in maker education, not just your traditional school curriculum. How has that carried over to, you know, the rest of her life?
Right. Well, for a child like Viola, who's always been really focused on science, you know, STEM, basic, traditional, like STEM, technology, engineering, maths. For someone like her, I think she had a little bit of a disconnect growing when she was younger with. She'd be talking about things that other people just really didn't relate to, and she was really interested in like spelling, and she loved like the idea of negative numbers, and kids would look at her like, what? And so I think the fact that it's actually cool to be a geek, and she actually won't be offended I said that, but it's actually a badge of honor for her. She feels like she's earned, and even if she has issues sometimes, say like with making friends socially, other kids come to her because they see, oh, how did you get past that level, or how did you manage to make this, and they respect that she has this other knowledge, and then that's a common ground she has with other kids who maybe in the past she may not have so much in common with, or maybe would not know how to relate to on a more social level. And I feel very thankful as a parent to have her being, you know, her growing up in this kind of environment where it's actually cool for a girl to be, you know, really geeky and smart and, you know, amazing and willing to try take a lot of risks, you know, safe risks to do new things that other people haven't seen before, and you know, it's very inspiring for me as a parent.
I have one really interesting like example. There's one girl from like my relative's family, and she is at the second year of middle school, and she just don't want to go to school anymore, and she decided like no matter what you say and no matter what you do, I just don't go to school. So her parents got like really
anxious.
Right? Yeah, they don't know what to do, and they think like, okay, can we send her to you for just a couple of days, just let her do something instead of just staying home. So I just like saying, okay, just come here, and then she stay in the makerspace, and I teach her how to use just one tool, like the drill machine. And then after like maybe half a day, she come to me saying like, look, I made this. She made like a wooden like a lamp shelf, like that.
On her own?
On her own, yeah. And she said, look, this look nice. Do you like it? And do you like it? She showed this to everybody in the makerspace, and she got like a smile and really happy on her face. And after several days, she just called me saying like, hey Molly, can you lend me a laptop? I said like, why do you need a laptop? She said, I want to use the laser cutter, and I want to learn CD.
Right.
Yeah, I want to learn CAD.
So all of a sudden there's this huge interest in learning. But it's not a traditional type of learning. But that's, I mean, it goes back to what you were saying, was that, you know, this type of group learning, you know, how education became...
It's a bit old-fashioned
Yes,
now.
it is. It's traditional, it's old-fashioned, and what we're looking at in education is something that's more individualized or customized.
And I think also the themes that have come up too is that for different learners, this is they have a chance to excel, and also the sort of social capital attached to like, oh, you know how to do that, you know, like is empowering too.
Right. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk more about maker education here in China. But first of all, Doris and Molly, thank you so much for being on the program. When we come back, we're going to be joined by another man who's going to talk about kind of a more general China theme around maker education. He's been creating maker fairs, organizing these big events. Please stay with us.
We have in the studio with us Ryan Lai, who is the organizer of Play and Make 2016.
Interest is the key. How the students can get into the direction of engineering, you need to let them like it.
When we first came to NYU Shanghai, one of the things we said was that we had the sort of unambitious desire to be everybody's minor, because we think that every field can be amplified by understanding interactivity and media and computation and that kind of thing, and does support the liberal arts and the humanities.
Welcome back to Crossover. So we have in the studio with us Ryan Lai, who is the organizer of Play and Make 2016. Tell us a little bit about that, because you're pretty much spearheading the maker movement here in China.
I cannot say that, but a Play and Make event is a government-supported and organized event started last year. So Play and Make 2016 is actually the second one. We had one last year. It's called Play and Make Beijing 2015. And that actually follows the policy of the whole maker movement, government support, education, and maker education. And so the government body, which is the Municipal Commission of Education of Beijing, they start this event to support all the kids to learn how to be a maker, and they want the kids to be in the school to study how to practice their way of making things and transform the traditional education into a more innovative way, so the kids can actually make things, not only learn things.
So this is being incorporated into the schools, is what you're saying. At what age, at what grade are they starting to do this type of maker education?
This event actually it incorporates both elementary school and middle school, which means from 6 years old to 18 years old.
Okay.
So what do you do for this event? Do you bring all of your maker equipment to schools and then set up a marquee? In the beginning, we helped the government to basically design this whole event from the ground up, because they don't have this kind of thing 2 years ago.
Right.
So they realized as students they need to actually learn and practice, and then they can start to get interest into engineering, mathematics, science and technology. So in the future, they become engineers. But when they are actually taking their elementary education or entry-level education, they actually need to know some of the stuff. But interest is the key. How the students can get into the direction of engineering, you need to let them like it. So before, all the education is focused on mathematics, Chinese, physics, chemistry. Right. But a lot of people find after they graduate from college, those things are of no use or little use. And now, because the government, Chinese government started to have this policy on create a better, stronger manufacturing power in the world. It's called the Made in China 2025. And this thing actually is a 30 years plan, which means we have to start from now to train kids to be more, like craftsmen.
Okay, well, we went out to the 2016 Play and Make, which was held in May of this year. Let's take a look. Wow, it seems amazing. I mean, I'm really impressed by what children these days are able to make.
Yeah, totally.
Marianne, why would younger children be more innovative?
I because they haven't been doing the right way of doing something, right? And so, I mean, it takes a lot to uneducate ourselves from that process.
Sure, of course. You know, Lai Yun, you're talking a lot about this government policy, and it's obviously very welcome, it's encouraging, but part of me is kind of wondering, okay, are we moving too far? Is that pendulum swinging way over on this side? You know, the last 10 years was focused on, okay, building up business and liberal arts, and is it moving too far? Are we? Is it sustainable?
From my point of view, it's definitely sustainable, and it's going to be further for sure. Because right now we are at the starting point of this innovative education, maker education. In the future, it's gonna be more because right now Chinese kids are learning things that based on the old traditional Chinese education. Exactly.
Right.
So
learning.
they just get into the door, and when they explore and when they find out there's a huge world out there, they're gonna want more.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think this would be appropriate for all industries in China? Say, for example, in law, in finance, would they want someone who's studied at a maker school to come and then be a lawyer with them?
Well, I cannot say a lawyer maker school, but there's based on the innovative education or innovation education, there's a key point which is design thinking, which is also, in other words, for critical thinking.
Critical thinking.
Yeah, I came from a design background. My education taught me how to design a thing. You need to focus a lot on the background, the real need, the feedback of the users. So those things definitely apply to all fields.
I agree. When we first came to NYU Shanghai, one of the things we said was that we had the sort of unambitious desire to be everybody's minor, because we think that every field can be amplified by understanding interactivity and media and computation and that kind of thing, and does support the liberal arts and the humanities.
Right,
as well.
and I think it goes back, when you work with your hands, you're grounded in reality, grounded in in the present, versus always being, like you said, in studying in books or thinking in abstract philosophical thinking.
And it really works with the startup fever that's really hitting China too.
Right.
There's so many people leaving university, leaving their well-paid jobs to start up their own company because they found a passion they want to do.
So if this is all going to be incorporated into Chinese education, do you see, like, I don't know, maybe the Gaokao in 10 years, they'll have to make something for the Gaokao. I don't know. How is that going to be incorporated into the testing aspects of Chinese education?
It's definitely a long-term plan because China has this huge population base.
Right.
And for example, Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, highly populated area and really advanced technology, social structure, and all the basic infrastructure. So the education is definitely a lot further than rural areas. So starting from major cities, major maker education or innovation education is going to advance faster. But when they grow to be steady growth, and a lot of other areas will follow up. Right. My understanding, we actually had a lot of experience talking to other provinces, administrations. They actually want a lot of the most advanced programs, competitions to go to their provinces because all the major cities right now, like Beijing, Shanghai, all the kids are full. All the weekends, their time is so occupied. Right. They have a lot of things to choose, but other provinces, secondary cities, they're not. So they actually have more desire of getting this education, maker education.
Right. It doesn't have to compete with all of the, 10 other classes that each child in China is doing as an extracurricular activity.
Exactly. Yeah. So from a policy making perspective, it's going to take step by step.
Right.
Because the current education system have been here for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's great. I mean, we opened up the show talking about how a lot of children these days are,
on their iPads
and on these screens. I mean, I think this type of maker education is something that is very much needed and can only help our children, be more grounded and really understand what's happening in the world, be greater problem solvers and really excel in critical thinking. I want to thank both of you so much for being here today and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to our viewers at home for tuning in. We'll see you next weekend on Crossover. Bye for now.